The sanction to Ferrari for freely release Leclerc during the FP2 in Singapore was not only fair, but evidenced a structural problem in the way the equipment operates under pressure in the pit lane. This incident can mark a before and after in the FIA regulations. The free number 2 of the 2025 Singapore Grand Prix was a chaotic scenario, a storm of factors that were aligned to gesture one of the most controversial moments of the season. At first glance, only another unfortunate episode would seem in a weekend of Formula One, but when looking carefully every detail, a chain of hurried decisions, limit conditions and a dynamic in boxes that touched the operational collapse is revealed. Everything happened with just 12 minutes in the session, but the decisions taken in that short period have the potential to have an impact on the sports policy of the entire category. The training had already been marked by multiple interruptions, highlighting a red flag generated by Liam Lawson by losing control of their car in the curve 17. This situation drastically reduced the effective filming time for the equipment, who had already designed demanding test programs, seeking to maximize each return as if it were a classification. This urgency caused an operational bottling inside the pit lane. The teams knew that they would have very few opportunities to leave again and collect relevant data on tires, fuel load and car behavior under artificial lights in an extremely technical urban circuit such as Marina Bay. The tension could be felt in each box. Engineers, mechanics and pilots worked under almost intolerable pressure. It was a counter-relage race not only to put cars on the track, but to execute each output without error margin. And it was precisely that need to operate to the limit that ignited the wick. When the career address announced the resumption of the session, Ferrari and McLaren, located in consecutive boxes, released their cars almost in unison. McLaren made Lando Norris out for the fast lane of the pit lane, and just a few seconds later, Ferrari authorized the departure of Charles Leclerc. What happened at that moment was a synchronization error in its purest state, but with very real mechanical and regulatory consequences. Leclerc, blindly trusting the signal that his mechanic gave him, started just when Norris was happening. The Ferrari onboard camera clearly shows that lateral visibility was practically nil for the Monegasco pilot. There was no way that Norris could see at full speed through the fast lane, an area where cars reach considerable speeds even within the closed environment of the pit lane. The impact was inevitable and violent. The Ferrari SF25 hit the left front wheel of the McLaren MCL39 with enough force to launch the British against the inner wall of the pit lane. The front wing of the Papaya car became trices on the spot, which forced the team to change its test program and face unexpected repairs. On the other hand, Leclerc could continue apparently without serious damage, but the incident had already triggered an official investigation by the FIA. This was not a simple accident. It was the result of a perfect storm of sports pressure, failures in internal communication, limited visibility, and a critical time management. The scene, transmitted live and analyzed from multiple angles, portrayed a moment of pure tension that exposes a vulnerability of current procedures in Formula One. And more, questions to what extent the equipment is prepared to operate safely at times of high demand, when the difference between a brilliant decision and a catastrophe can be measured in thousandths of a second. The response from the FIA to the incident between Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris soon arriving. The governing body of Formula One faced a delicate situation, not only because of the obvious damage suffered by the Norris car, but because of the precedent that represented this case in a context where pit lane security has become an increasingly sensitive issue within the paddock. The pit lane, historically considered a controlled area, has ceased to be an immune environment to chaos. And this episode confirmed it. After 22:30 local hours, Charles Leclerc was officially summoned before the sports commissioners along with representatives of the Ferrari team. The objective was clear: clarify the exact circumstances of the incident and determine responsibilities. The investigation relied on a range of technical tests: recording of the onboard cameras of both cars, visual material of the closed circuit of the pit lane, and the reports of the circuit staff. But beyond the images, which really conditioned the verdict, was the sequence of decisions taken by the Italian team seconds before the impact. The official document issued by the commissioners offers an extremely precise vision of what happened. According to his opinion, the 16 Leclerc car was authorized to go out by a member of the Ferrari team that failed to perform a complete evaluation of the pit lane situation. At that moment, the number 4 Norris already circulated through the rapid lane, having been released by McLaren moments before. What the commissioners highlighted with special emphasis was that the output order was not clear or safe, and that the Ferrari pilot had no way of perceiving the McLaren approach from its limited visibility position. The error was not from Leclerc as an individual. It was the Ferrari operating system, and in particular of the person in charge of coordinating an action as critical as it is to release a car in maximum tension conditions. This was not a simple technical infraction. It was a lack of diligence in the operation of the pit lane, an area that requires absolute control by the team in each release. The trial made it clear that responsibility cannot be delegated to the pilot in these cases, and that when the error is structural, the sanction must be exemplary. The fine imposed was €10,000, a figure that may seem symbolic within the multi-million-dollar budgets of the F1. But the message behind the punishment is what really matters. In the statement, the FIA was explicit by pointing out that this type of incidents had been treated with indulgence in the past, but that now a higher rod was imposed. The commissioners said that, based on precedents, this type of infraction deserves a more severe punishment than usual. And that statement, included in an official document, is what marks a turning point that we are witnessing a hardening in the sanction criteria related to operational safety. It is not just a financial penalty. It is a warning to the entire grille. In an era where each team seeks to optimize until the last millisecond, this obsession with efficiency compromises security cannot be allowed. And even less in the pit lane, where cars, mechanics, cameras, journalists, and career officers converge. This decision also opens a new chapter in the way FIA wants to manage risk. It moves away from a punitive logic based only on the damage caused and approaches a preventive vision based on potential risk. The impact result is not sanctioned only, but the operational negligence that made it possible. And in a championship as tight as that of 2025, where the margins are microscopic, a sanction of this type, even if it does not subtract points directly, can have devastating collateral effects on the morals and operation of a team. After knowing the sanction imposed on Ferrari for his insecure exit, all the spotlights went to the Monegasco pilot, Charles Leclerc. Not so much for being the executor of the maneuver, but for being the visible face of an incident that put in question not only the internal procedures of Ferrari, but also the real autonomy that pilots have in situations of maximum pressure. Leclerc's words, far from being evasive, shed light on a reality often ignored. In the pit lane, the pilot is almost one more passenger. In his post-sanction statements, Leclerc was clear when exposing how the situation was developed from his cockpit. He talked about an obvious confusion with the two McLaren that were next to leave, and explained that his chief mechanic assumed that Norris's car would reduce the march, which led to the green light to the SF25 without anticipating the danger. Leclerc explained that he did not receive a clear indication to stop, and in an environment like the pit lane, where lateral visibility is extremely reduced and the retrovisors not very useful for such close movements, the pilot must blindly trust the team's decision. Leclerc, explaining his lack of vision and his dependence on the team, not only defended his performance. He also put his finger on the sore on a structure that leaves the pilot exposed without tools to decide. This is an argument that goes beyond the Singapore GP. It has the potential to redefine how security is understood in areas where, until now, the focus was more in logistics than in the real risk. What happened in the second free practice of the 2025 Singapore Grand Prix cannot and should not be seen as a simple logistics error between Ferrari and McLaren, nor as an isolated event without greater importance beyond material damage. It is, in essence, a warning aloud for the entire ecosystem of Formula One. A raw reminder that even in a sport obsessed with millimeter perfection, there are gray areas where improvisation, pressure, and human error continue to have space. And those gray areas, such as pit lane, now claim urgent attention. Formula One has technologically evolved at a dizzying pace. Current monoplays are equipped with telemetry systems, predictive reliability alerts, programmable motor maps, track traffic detection, and absolute control over each operating parameter. However, when it comes to releasing a car from the box, many shields still depend on a mechanic watching with its naked eye whether or not another car comes. This disconnection between technological sophistication on the track and the craft in boxes is an anachronism that can no longer be tolerated. The FIA, by imposing a more severe sanction than the precedents for an unsafe exit, not only sent a message to Ferrari, he sent a message to the entire grille. The old habits no longer take place in Formula One of the 21st century. The equipment must review, update, and professionalize their output procedures.